It's incredible that in 2013 we still don't know whether federal law enforcement thinks that the Fourth Amendment lets it read people's emails without a warrant. We received a batch of documents from the IRS that appear to reveal that the agency does not think that its criminal investigative agents need to obtain a warrant from a judge before they read the contents of people's private emails. Americans should have clear information from the IRS about what the standard is it's using, and if it's not getting a warrant for every email, then we should demand that it does.
What's interesting here is that this is both weird, amusing, and appalling at the same time. And yet, I'm not sure anybody really is to blame. I think what probably happened in 1986, at a time where email was a novelty, probably less than 1 out of 1,000 people were using it, as compared with today, are 1 out of 1,000,000. And that's probably the origin of the weird 180-degree thing, which makes no sense at all. I mean, there's no logical reason.
It's based on the Stored Communications Act of 1986, giving law enforcement officers, including the IRS, access to emails that are 6 months old.
But I mean, you're being very
either by
generous.
court or subpoena.
So even if that's how the law was written, the fact that they're still parodying it today, though,
that's what I mean.
It should sound crazy to them.
Yeah. But look, the reason it's not evil is all bureaucracies always garner and protect and husband the power they already have. So if there's a law from '86 clearly obsolete, but allows them a lot of leeway, they would keep it. You know, if you're look, I don't want to defend them. This is insane. It ought to be repealed tomorrow in Congress, and if not, it ought to be upheld by the Supreme Court, so it'll apply to everybody. But you can understand there are people who are trying to go after criminals, and they say, well, we're not going to open everybody's email, but let's have this, you know, in our satchel if we need. Now, so I'm just trying to understand how it came to be, because it's surprising news. If you had asked any of us, what do you think the IRS has the power to do, if you had asked us yesterday, we would all have said, of course it can't do this, and there can't be any statutory reason why it would. So, I mean, I would attribute it to laziness, territoriality of the bureaucrats, and neglect. And now that it's out there, it ought to be unneglected and clearly repealed.
The IRS's power is expanding dramatically under things like Obamacare. And the idea that IRS agents can, on a glorified whim, investigate your private life in relation to your health care provisions and your taxes. I mean, there's not much left of your life if the government can go and start looking at your health care and how you spend your money.
And that's where the two stories are linked. You'd think that you're living in Pyongyang.
I should say the IRS did, right before the show, get back to us and say the agency abides by the law and does not use emails to target taxpayers.
Well, target is a Weasley word. I'm not sure what that means. And the law as it stands allows them to do anything. So perhaps targeting has a specific meaning. It should be banned from looking at anybody's email in the absence of a court order.
The loss of these lives should scar the conscience of civilized people everywhere. This is not a discussion about abstract concepts like choice. We are talking about brutal deaths of newborn children.
It's difficult to look at the images and read the testimony and hear the testimony that's coming out of this trial going on right now in Philadelphia, but it's so important. People need to know that this is happening. This is a mass murder trial, and the media needs to be covering it.
This is the capital murder trial of Dr. Kermit Gosnell, charged with killing 7 babies born alive during abortions. This is not getting a lot of attention anywhere. The National Abortion Federation statement is actually from March 21st. Couldn't find any other statements from any other groups. This is what they said. This particular facility in Philadelphia is an outlier and not typical of the high-quality abortion care provided by the majority of abortion providers in this country. We've asked a number of pro-choice groups, a number of representatives to weigh in, and they have not. As far as media coverage, NBC, MSNBC have covered it 0 times, ABC 0 times, CBS 0 times, CNN has covered it once, and we could continue with the print lack of coverage.
You have Pat Moynihan, a famously liberal professor and senator, who said of this procedure, long before it happened in the clinic, in this particular clinic, he called it tantamount to infanticide, which is what it is. And the fact that it's not covered, I think, is easily explained because it casts aspersions. It puts the pro-abortion forces in a very bad light. It brings the issue of late-term abortion starkly into relief. Here's a place that clearly went over the edge, clearly engaged in the murder. But even the ones that are a second or two on the other side of the line, where you are destroying an infant as it is exiting the womb, is, I think, as Moynihan indicated, murder. And you can have that position and not believe that all abortions ought to be illegal. You could have a different position on early term abortions, which I think is in a different category. But on this, I would think it'd be unanimity in the country. And the reason that there is resistance against either outlawing it or heavily regulating it is because the pro-choice people imagine that any regulation at any level of any kind is the beginning of the end of abortion rights. And I think there is room for a national consensus on this. If there ever was, it would be on this kind of procedure. And I'm just surprised by the stubbornness of the forces who resist any regulation or outlawing of this.
This has been a Sunfish production.